Society fears the man who can't be bought. Erich Fromm, Henry David Thoreau. What if I told you that society doesn't actually want you to be free? Not truly. Not in the sense that Erich Fromm or Henry David Thoreau meant when they spoke of freedom, not the kind that can't be taxed, tracked, or tamed. Society fears the man who can't be bought, not because he's dangerous, but because he's untouchable. You can't seduce him with wealth. You can't manipulate him with fear. You can't shame him with popularity contests or coerce him with trends. And in a world built on transactions where everything is bought, sold, or sold out, the man who says no to the market is a walking act of rebellion. A living question mark. I want you to imagine this scenario. You're offered everything you've ever wanted: fame, wealth, admiration, but the cost is your time, your values, your authenticity. Would you take it? Most people would. Most people have. And yet we celebrate those rare few who walk away. Why? Because deep down we know that the person who refuses to sell his soul is the only one who truly owns it. And ownership of the self, that sacred sovereignty, is the one thing no system can manufacture.
Click subscribe to this channel to get more profound insights.
Erich Fromm called this the escape from freedom. He argued that modern humans, overwhelmed by choice and the burden of responsibility, often flee from freedom into conformity. We surrender our autonomy not to tyrants, but to algorithms, job titles, and social expectations. We follow scripts written for us by invisible hands: family, culture, media. And in doing so, we become what Fromm called automaton, conformists. We blend in so well that we forget we ever had a self to begin with. But the man who can't be bought, he remembers. Or maybe he never forgot. He lives by a different rhythm, a deeper truth. But Thoreau went to Walden not to escape society, but to confront it. He wanted to know what life was, stripped of noise. And in the woods, he wrote something that changed the world. A man is rich in proportion to the number of things which he can afford to let alone. Think about that. Not what you can acquire, but what you can walk away from. That is the measure of wealth. That is the currency of the unbuyable man. So why does society fear him? Because he exposes the rest of us. He becomes a mirror. While we hustle for promotions and followers, he sits still and listens to the wind. While we trade our time for money, he trades his money for time. While we live for applause, he lives for silence. His life is a quiet indictment of ours. And that's terrifying, because if he's right, then we have been wrong, spectacularly, tragically wrong. But here's the twist. The unbuyable man isn't asking to be followed. He isn't recruiting disciples or building an audience. He's simply living. And it's that self-containment, that lack of neediness, that makes him magnetic. You can't bribe him because he already has enough. You can't threaten him because he's not afraid to lose what never owned him. He is dangerous not because he seeks power, but because he redefines it. Ask yourself, what would you do if you were completely unshackled from the need to be approved of? Who would you be if money, status, and validation were no longer your masters? Would you still chase the same dreams? Would you still post the same things? Would you still say yes to the same people? It's not a rhetorical question, it's the question. Because here's what I've learned: freedom isn't given. It's taken, it's chosen. And it's lonely. But in that loneliness, there's a kind of peace that no applause can give you. Imagine waking up and knowing that your joy is not for sale, but that your dignity is not on auction, that your values are not negotiable. Imagine how powerful that would feel. Imagine how threatening that would look to a world that profits off your insecurity. You see, the man who can't be bought doesn't need the world to like him. He's not performing for the algorithm. He's not trying to win. He's trying to be. And in a society addicted to doing, achieving, and consuming, being is the most radical act of all. So here's the challenge. Can you be that person? Can you start small by saying no when you mean no, by sitting with discomfort instead of numbing it with dopamine, by choosing silence over noise, presence over performance? Can you begin the slow, painful, beautiful journey toward becoming someone who can't be bought? Because once you take that first step, you'll notice something strange. The world will resist. Friends will question you. Systems will push back. You'll be told you're selfish, arrogant, unrealistic. But what they're really saying is, you're making me uncomfortable. You're reminding me of what I've given up. And that's when you'll know you're on the right path. The currency of integrity. Why selling out is easier than you think. It's easy to believe that selling out is a dramatic, one-time event, an artist signing a corrupt record deal, a visionary compromising for money, a dissenter suddenly endorsing the very system they once opposed. But that's a myth. In reality, selling out happens in 1,000 tiny moments. It's the slow erosion of integrity, not the sudden collapse. And often, it begins with something that looks innocent, a white lie to keep the peace, a decision made for comfort instead of truth, a silence where you should have spoken. Each choice seems small, but they add up. Slowly, the price tag on your soul gets lower. Until one day you find yourself wondering how you ended up so far from who you meant to be. This is why the man who can't be bought is so rare. Because staying unbought requires constant vigilance. It's not about being perfect, it's about being awake. Erich Fromm warned us that modern society doesn't just tempt us to sell out, it trains us to. From birth, we are conditioned to perform, to compete, to compare. We're told our worth is external, measurable, and contingent. Grades, likes, salaries, followers, these become proxies for value. But here's the sinister part. The more you chase those metrics, the more you forget your own internal compass. You stop asking, what matters to me? And start asking, what will they reward me for? And in that moment, you've already made the trade. Integrity, then, is not a virtue you carry like a badge. It's a practice, a discipline. It's saying no when yes would be easier. It's speaking the truth, even when it's inconvenient. It's choosing values over validation. And most of all, it's knowing the difference between success and surrender. Because sometimes, what the world applauds as success is actually just surrender dressed in glitter. Thoreau understood this when he refused to pay a poll tax that funded a war he didn't believe in. He spent a night in jail for it. Most people wouldn't risk that. Most people would have paid the tax and rationalized it. But Thoreau knew that every compromise carries a cost, and he wasn't willing to pay it with his conscience. He once wrote, "The only obligation which I have a right to assume is to do at any time what I think right." That's the essence of integrity, not what's popular, and not what's profitable, what's right. But let's be honest, doing what's right is rarely rewarded. In fact, it's often punished. The world doesn't give gold stars for honesty. It gives backlash, alienation, and sometimes silence. So why would anyone choose integrity over comfort? Because there's a deeper reward. Not applause from others, but peace within. When you live in alignment with your values, you don't need external permission to feel worthy. You are worthy because you know who you are, and more importantly, you know who you're not. Still, the temptations to betray that self are everywhere. A better paycheck, a viral trend, a shortcut to recognition. And these temptations are so seductive precisely because they come disguised as opportunities. But what they really are, often, is invitations to abandon yourself. And if you accept them too often, you'll wake up one day with everything you thought you wanted yet feel empty. Why? Because the real cost of selling out isn't just your integrity, it's your identity. So ask yourself, what's your price? Is it comfort? Approval? Safety? Would you trade your voice for applause? Your time for status? Your truth for survival? These are not abstract questions. They are real. They are daily. And if you don't know your price, someone else will name it for you. But here's the good news. You can reclaim your integrity at any moment. It's not gone forever. You can turn around. You can choose again. You can start honoring the part of you that refuses to perform. The part of you that still remembers what you believed before the world taught you to bargain. It won't be easy. You might lose things: comfort, convenience, even people. But you will gain something else: clarity, purpose, power. Because the man who can't be bought doesn't need to shout. He doesn't need to prove anything. His life is the proof. His choices speak louder than his words. And that kind of life, quiet, principled, unshakable, is more subversive than any protest, more revolutionary than any slogan. It's a reminder that freedom is not a place you arrive. It's a way you live. So next time you face a choice, big or small, pause. Ask yourself, am I choosing this because it aligns with who I am, or because I'm afraid not to? Am I moving toward truth or away from fear? And most of all, is this a step toward becoming someone who can't be bought? Because every decision is a brick in the house of your character. And eventually you will have to live in what you've built. The prison of comfort, how society traps you with what you think you want comfort, is seductive. It whispers promises of peace, ease, and security. It offers warm beds, predictable routines, stable jobs, and curated content to scroll away the existential dread. But here's the trap: comfort is rarely free. It demands something in return, usually your awareness, sometimes your freedom, always your edge. And the more you indulge in comfort without question, the less you notice what it's costing you. That's how society ensnares you, not with chains and violence, but with soft beds and bright screens. The most effective prison is the one you never realize you're in. Thoreau saw this in his time, and it's only become more true in ours. He wrote, "The mass of men lead lives of quiet desperation. They work jobs they hate, buy things they don't need, and distract themselves from the gnawing feeling that something is missing." Why? Because the alternative, stepping outside the script, is terrifying. The unknown is uncomfortable. Freedom is uncomfortable. But choosing your own path means taking full responsibility for your life. And that's hard. It's far easier to follow the well-lit road, even if it leads to nowhere. But here's the paradox. The more comfortable you become, the less alive you feel. You stop taking risks. You stop questioning. You stop growing. Comfort dulls your senses, your hunger, your spirit. It replaces meaning with entertainment, purpose with productivity, and truth with convenience. You start to forget who you are because you're too busy being what the world rewards. And in that forgetting, you lose something sacred, your capacity to rebel against what doesn't feel right. This is why the man who can't be bought often lives a life that looks, from the outside, deeply uncomfortable. Thoreau slept in a cabin with no luxuries. Fromm turned away from conventional success to write books that disturbed people. They both chose a kind of voluntary hardship, not because they loved pain, but because they understood that comfort, unchecked, is a form of control. When you're too comfortable, you become easy to manage. You stop asking questions. You stop resisting. You stop dreaming. Now, let's be clear, comfort itself isn't evil. We all need rest. We all need safety. But when comfort becomes your compass, when it becomes the primary thing you chase, you begin to trade depth for ease. You start avoiding anything that challenges you. You surround yourself with people who agree with you, consume media that confirms your beliefs, and make choices that keep you numb rather than awake. And before you know it, you're no longer living, you're just existing. So ask yourself, what comforts are keeping you trapped? Is it the job you silently hate but refuse to leave because it pays well? Is it the relationship that feels safe but not real? Is it the identity you've built online that gets likes but no longer feels true? Are you trading authenticity for approval, truth for convenience, purpose for predictability? Erich Fromm warned that modern society creates people who are well-fed, well-entertained, and spiritually empty. We're so full of content that we've forgotten how to be content. We're so connected that we've forgotten how to be alone. And all the while, the system smiles because a comfortable person is a predictable person. A numb person doesn't protest. A distracted person doesn't rebel. But the man who can't be bought, he chooses discomfort when it leads to growth. He chooses solitude over shallow company. He chooses silence over noise, hunger over gluttony, questions over certainty. Not because he enjoys suffering, but because he knows that the path to freedom is rarely paved with ease. He understands that the soul needs friction, not sedation. That transformation requires tension. That comfort zones are the most spiritual dead zones of all. You might be wondering, how do I begin to escape this prison of comfort? Start by noticing what you reach for when you feel lost or empty. Is it your phone? Is it a distraction? Is it a lie you tell yourself to avoid facing the truth? What would happen if, instead of reaching outward, you sat still and felt the discomfort fully? What would it reveal about your life? What would it demand of you? This is where the true work begins, not in rejecting all comfort, but in choosing which comforts nourish you and which ones numb you. Not all discomfort is growth, and not all ease is decay. But there are signs your intuition knows. You feel it in your gut when you're shrinking. You feel it in your chest when you're avoiding something real. So listen, pay attention, and then ask yourself, am I building a life that makes me free, or just one that makes me comfortable? Because comfort can be a beautiful thing, but only if it's earned through truth, not avoidance. Only if it supports your freedom, not enslaves you. And the man who can't be bought, he knows the difference. He chooses discomfort today if it means integrity tomorrow. He walks away from the easy path if it leads him away from his values. He's not fearless, he's faithful. Faithful to something larger than fear, larger than comfort, larger than even himself. Becoming untouchable, the daily practice of inner freedom is not a destination. It is not a spontaneous awakening or a single act of rebellion. It is a daily practice, a quiet discipline, a series of choices that slowly carve out the shape of a life rooted in truth rather than fear. The man who can't be bought isn't born that way, he becomes that way through relentless honesty, small acts of courage, and the refusal to betray himself. He doesn't always feel strong, but he always returns to alignment. And over time, that alignment becomes his power. It makes him untouchable. You see, society can only control what it can manipulate. It can manipulate fear. It can manipulate desire. It can use shame, praise, punishment, and reward. But when a person no longer fears exile and no longer craves applause, what leverage does society have? None. That person becomes sovereign. Not in a loud, performative way, but in the deepest, most unshakable sense. They no longer play the game because they've realized the game is a trap. This doesn't mean withdrawing from the world. It means engaging with it from a place of wholeness. It means you go to work, not because you're terrified of poverty, but because you've chosen work that aligns with your values. It means you speak kindly, not because you want others to like you, but because kindness is an expression of your truth. It means you can walk away from jobs, relationships, systems because your sense of self isn't dependent on any of them. That's real power. That's freedom. But here's the truth most people don't want to face. Becoming this kind of person requires loss. The loss of illusions, the loss of certain comforts, and the loss of fitting in. You may lose followers, friends, even family. People might not understand. They might call you difficult, cold, arrogant, or weird. Let them. Because the deeper you go into yourself, the more you'll realize that most people are just reflections of each other. They mirror the same wants, avoid the same fears, chase the same validations. But you, if you're willing to walk the path of the unbuyable, you become something different. You become a mirror of possibility. You show people what they could be if they stopped outsourcing their worth. You remind them that freedom is not given by governments or corporations, it's claimed, one breath, one choice, one moment of courage at a time. You show them that there is another way to live, a way that doesn't require selling your soul in exchange for attention, a way that doesn't depend on trends or titles or trophies, a way that is terrifyingly real. So, where do you begin? With silence. Find a moment in your day to unplug from the noise. Sit alone. Listen inwardly. Ask yourself, what am I doing that no longer feels true? Then ask, what am I avoiding that I know I need to face? Write it down. Don't judge it. Just witness it. Then take one small step toward alignment. Say no to something you usually tolerate. Say yes to something you usually fear. Speak honestly when it would be easier to stay silent. This is how freedom grows choice by choice. Integrity is not a trait, it's a muscle. And like any muscle, it strengthens through resistance. The more you honor your truth, the clearer it becomes. The more you practice presence, the less you'll need performance. And the more you learn to live without being bought, the more you will inspire others to do the same. So I leave you with this final question. What would your life look like if you were no longer for sale? Whatever your answer is, start becoming it. Because the world doesn't need more perfect people. It needs more free ones. People like you. People who can't be bought.